They call me Dr. Manhattan.
Also known as Jonathan Osterman, Dr. Manhattan is one of the most intriguing characters in the Watchman storylines. After he got into a radioactive accident and gained these superpowers, Dr. Manhattan was introduced as the sole superhero with powers in this storyline. From the ability to manipulate time, atoms, and reality to his self-duplication powers, Dr. Manhattan surely has some of the most impressive powers in the entire DC universe. He can not only manipulate matter to construct or deconstruct particles, but also play with time and reality itself. And today, we shall explore some of the hidden powers and tell you all about him. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Origins of Dr. Manhattan. Born in 1929, John Osterman was the son of a watchmaker who was highly encouraged to pursue the field of atomic physics after the atomic attack on Hiroshima. His father pushed him to study physics, and he started his education at Princeton in 1948. Over the next decade, Osterman finished his PhD and went on to work at the Gila Flats, where he met a woman named Janie Slater. The two started going out, and things went downhill for Osterman when he was trapped in an intrinsic field separator while trying to retrieve her watch. As he watched the device count down the seconds until his atoms were completely smashed, Osterman's spirit was stronger than his body, and he somehow survived even though his body disintegrated. Somehow his consciousness took the form of an electromagnetic pattern, and he figured out how to rebuild a physical body over time. He first appeared as a disembodied circulatory system roaming around the facility's kitchen, which then turned into a somewhat muscled skeleton. In about 2 weeks, he appeared in the form of a naked, blue-skinned man in front of Slater, who immediately figured out that it was John. Soon enough, he gained a reputation as Dr. Manhattan, and the higher-ups in Washington decided to introduce him to the world to spread fear among enemy nations. He then made an appearance where he managed to disassemble a rifle through sheer will, and also melted tank armor with his hands. These were just brief displays of his vast powers, and let us now explore every one of them in detail. Atomic manipulation. Dr. Manhattan gained the ability to manipulate matter on an atomic level, which meant that he could reconstruct as well as deconstruct objects and living beings alike. On a lower level, he would disintegrate molecules and then increase their speed to fire explosive blasts. On a higher level, he could cause massive blasts, create life, and remain invulnerable even in fatal situations. In one such instance, Ozymandias unleashed a giant squid on the roads of Manhattan to bring about destruction, and Dr. Manhattan wanted to deal with the situation without creating chaos and panic among the masses. However, Rorschach and Walter Kovacs refused to let things remain a secret, and Dr. Manhattan decided to deal with him by disintegrating him on the spot. In this way, he could not only reconstruct or disintegrate his own body, but also use these powers on other objects and human beings as well. He once turned water into milk and even created a fancy glass structure out of sand. Time perception and manipulation. One of Dr. Manhattan's most fascinating abilities revolves around his perception of time and precognition. He has attained cosmic awareness, and he can experience the past, present, and future at the same time. He perceives time in a non-linear fashion, which almost makes him a godlike entity who can sense it when any past timelines are erased or altered. He can also peek into his own future, and he views all these events from a third-person point of view. In some instances, Dr. Manhattan can also take other people with him while traveling throughout the timeline. While he cannot change the future, he can certainly see all the possible outcomes of the present and subtly make tiny changes that might influence certain events. In this way, he could also create entirely new timelines that splintered reality in the past as well as the future. However, he sticks to the rules of time travel and typically refrains from getting involved in tweaking any major events. When he once tried to do that by immersing himself in the DC universe, he ended up causing a chain of events that erased the Justice Society of America from existence. Since he knows the outcomes of most events, Manhattan mostly prefers to be a bystander, and he once described this experience to his girlfriend when he revealed that he learned all about the Kennedy assassination before it happened. He elaborated on it by saying that he cannot prevent the future since it is already happening to him, and that everything is already preordained. He further likened himself to a puppet who could see the strings tugging at him and compelling him to go through these predetermined motions. Self-duplication. As an extension of his ability to manipulate atoms, Dr. Manhattan can create several copies of himself through the process of biofission. He can essentially split his quantum consciousness into many copies that were as powerful as his original form, and they also appeared as exact replicas of his physical form. These duplicates had a mind of their own, enabling him to be in several places at once. Since they were essentially an extension of his consciousness, Dr. Manhattan had no trouble delegating some tasks to his duplicates while he could focus on what was most important. In one such instance, one of his duplicates was in bed with Laurie, who could tell that he was distracted, while the original one was researching something in his lab. While Dr. Manhattan could split his consciousness into parts, he had no trouble fusing them back into his body without suffering any adverse side effects. Teleportation. Dr. Manhattan was not only capable of teleporting himself to Earth, but also to other planets and alternate realities. His teleportation powers were not restricted by space, and he could teleport to other dimensions and alternate realities by warping space around him. He could also bring along other people as well as objects, and he once teleported to Mars with Laurie, which was a distance of about 297 million kilometers. He barely took any time to teleport such large distances, and his ability to jump across space often stirred up trouble for others around him. In one such instance, he messed with the Watchman timeline and teleported the comedian to an alternate DC universe to save him from Ozymandias during the Doomsday Clock story arc. Matter creation. While we have established that Dr. Manhattan can manipulate matter at a subatomic level, his ability to create matter out of anything is one of his more hidden powers. While he famously created a whole new body for himself after the tragic incident at Gila Flats, he has also demonstrated this ability on numerous other occasions. On a simple level, he could create water out of nothing, and he later used the same powers to turn water into milk. On a more advanced level, he created an oxygen aura out of nothing to help Laurie breathe on Mars. Manhattan had also used these powers to create an elaborate crystalline palace out of Martian sand so that he could peacefully live on Mars. Energy projection. John was capable of generating and releasing large amounts of energy in the form of concussive blasts that could do a whole lot of damage. He could vaporize objects or even humans, and his precision when it came to manipulating energy was quite impressive. He could also disrupt electrical systems or conjure protective shields, and he once managed to suck out all the energy from Guy Gardner's Green Lantern ring. All his energy-related powers raised questions about his energy source, and it was soon revealed that his body was made up of a form of cosmic energy known as the connective energy. This form of energy was created by super celestial beings to form multiverses, and John essentially contained this energy within his body. In fact, Ozymandias revealed that the energy from John's body was enough to solve the world's energy crisis, and he could also use it to create new life. He used his energy to accelerate evolution on a deserted planet in one such scenario, and there is no limit to his potential. Shapeshifting. While Dr. Manhattan usually appears as a humanoid, he has the ability to change his size, shape, and appearance at will. He could grow to great heights or shrink to the size of a button, and he had such impressive control over these powers that he could remain at these sizes for extended periods. In addition to this, Manhattan could appear in non-human forms as well, and he once demonstrated this ability during the Vietnam War. In this scenario, he turned into a giant to face the army generals who immediately surrendered and ran away. As an extension of his shape-shifting abilities, Dr. Manhattan could enhance the size of his body parts, and he would often do that in bed while being intimate with Laurie and Jenny. Reality alteration. One of Dr. Manhattan's best powers is his ability to alter the very fabric of reality, and he holds enough power to manipulate the most fundamental forces of the universe. In theory, he was capable of wreaking havoc in the universe, but he was pretty aware of his powers and he refrained from doing so. He could create or destroy entire universes in the flick of an eye, and he could also merge different timelines into one. During the Flashpoint story arc, Barry Allen tries his best to reinstate normalcy in his universe, and Dr. Manhattan steps in and uses his powers to erase 10 years from the world. He ended up creating Prime Earth as a consequence, and he eventually managed to undo all the alterations he made to Prime Earth. His control over reality was quite commendable, and he could casually commit acts, such as keeping the Flashpoint timeline as it was, even when it was meant to be erased, and eventually decided to erase it himself at a later date. Immortality. Dr. Manhattan's consciousness is not restricted to his physical form, which effectively makes it impossible for him to die. In this sense, he is immortal, and his consciousness can always rebuild a physical form to bring him back to life in the event of death. Moreover, he does not age and he is immune to all forms of human ailments, and it is safe to say that he is immortal. Even in his origin story, we see him regenerate his body slowly over time, and he worked his way up right from the subatomic level. He first appeared in the form of a floating brain and eyes, eventually building the rest of his body and returning to his physical form. He once managed to recover from a snapped neck in a matter of seconds, and he also regenerated his body in another instance after Ozymandias built a device to hurt him. Mind reading and telepathy. While this ability is not often explored in the comics, Dr. Manhattan is capable of reading others' minds and sensing their thoughts. While he has a detached view of humanity, he can sense what others think and even influence their thoughts to some extent. In simpler words, he could communicate with others telepathically, and he sometimes used this power to invade their minds and bend them to his will. For instance, he once used this ability to telepathically attack Ronnie Raymond and then forcibly remind him of a vision from his past to leave him traumatized. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we have covered most of Dr. Manhattan's hidden powers. Undoubtedly, he has some of the most impressive skill sets in the entire DC universe, and it is quite fascinating that his powers are enhanced to a point where he can alter the mere fabric of reality. From manipulating matter to reading minds, he can certainly do it all, and we are in complete awe of his powers. We would also love to hear your thoughts, so do share your thoughts on his powers in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.